Minister, it's been great over the past month to see Dublin City reopening again. We see people back in their offices, we see shops and businesses reopening, and also at night time we see many people back out socialising again. Unfortunately, however, that reopening has also been accompanied by a significant increase in violent criminal activity in the inner city of Dublin. And I know the title of the topical issue is antisocial behaviour. I think it more properly could be referred to as violent criminal activity, and I don't think we should be understating it by simply referring to it as antisocial behaviour. The type of activity I'm talking about, Minister, is young men or boys getting involved in violence against other people whom they don't know. In effect, it's just gratuitous violence being perpetrated by them on people who work in restaurants or indeed who are doormen. It's violence being perpetrated on other young men and boys who are walking down the street. And even yesterday I heard of an attack of a young woman not far from here in Dublin. And they seem to follow the same characteristics. It's young men attacking people who they simply don't know. And I think we need to try to formulate a method of resolving and approaching this, because it's a very serious matter, and I think it's going to become recognised as being just a part of life in Dublin unless we take a stance in respect of it now. I think we need to send out the message, Minister, and I know you will agree in respect to this, that there should be zero tolerance for this type of gratuitous assault upon individuals. It's simply not acceptable that either boys or young men, and in general they are the victims, are subjected to attacks in the public streets by people that they don't know. As I said to you, I've seen it happen on Dame Lane, it's been happening in Merrion Row, it's happening in Stephen's Green, it's happening all over the city. I know Deputy Gannon is in on this topical issue as well. I'm sure it's happening in his constituency. But I would ask, Minister, that we ensure that we have greater visibility of policing, as has been mentioned already, and that we will try to just emphasise that this type of behaviour is totally socially unacceptable.
The Government, Minister Humphreys and I are determined to tackle antisocial behaviour and violent behaviour. And we are very conscious of the effect it can have on the quality of life and people's safety. We are aware, of course, of the effects it can have in Dublin City for residents, for business, and for many of us who want to visit our capital city and enjoy what it has to offer. Minister Humphreys and I are also both aware of the importance of high visibility policing and know that people feel safe when they see a presence from An Garda Síochána in Dublin. I know Minister Humphreys met with senior members of An Garda Síochána in Dublin City as recently as last week to discuss the issues raised by the deputies. She also met with representatives of the businesses in Dublin City Centre, as well as local representatives to hear their concerns. The Minister and I will be in regular contact with An Garda Síochána and others as we progress through the autumn and winter on the actions being taken to ensure that people feel safe in Dublin and in other towns and cities throughout Ireland. We are clear that incidences of assault or intimidation are completely unacceptable. People must feel safe and feel safe in their communities. Preventing children and young people getting involved and diverting them away from criminality when they have already become involved in criminality is a key priority for me and both the Programme for Government and the Justice Plan of 2021, which contain a number of commitments, both with regard to this and the broader issue of tackling antisocial behaviour more generally and violent crime. In line with a commitment in the Programme for Government, I last year established an expert forum on the antisocial behaviour. This forum considers the effectiveness of existing legislation and proposes new way forward, including new powers for An Garda Síochána and additional interventions to support parenting and offenders on a social level as well to help divert them from criminal activity. A subgroup of the forum has already considered measures which can be taken with regard to the misuse of scramblers and quad bikes in communities, and similar subgroups can also be established for other issues. For instance, I this week chaired the first meeting of a further subgroup on the issue of knife crime, and that's a matter that Deputy O'Callaghan has raised on numerous occasions in this chamber. And the group will now consider evidence-based best practice in addressing this issue, which will inform both potential changes to legislation, but as well as community safety policies, programmes, practices and interventions. In April, myself and Minister McEntee also published a Youth Justice Strategy of 2021 to 2027, which includes consideration of the full range of issues connected to children and young people at risk in coming into contact with the criminal justice system, including early intervention and preventative work, family support and diversion from crime through to the court processes and facilities, supervision of offenders, detention and reintegration, and support post-release. For the Deputy's information, the current Garda strength at the end of August in the Dublin Metropolitan Region, North Central and South Central divisions, which cover Dublin City, is 1,384 members of all ranks, This is an increase of almost 14% since the end of 15. The divisions are further supported by a Garda staff of 187, a 75% increase since the end of 2015. And that is a key part of what's happening at the moment, is hiring more Garda staff so we can redeploy Garda members, existing Garda members, back into Garda duties and away from administrative duties. I am assured that An Garda Síochána continues to implement high-visibility policing plans in Dublin City to address public disorder-related issues and antisocial behaviour, with particular overt and targeted policing of public places at times when public order instances and antisocial behaviour typically increase, such as at bank holidays and weekends. These uniformed members are supported by members attached to the Divisional Drugs Unit and the District Crime Prevention Units, performing covert patrols, gathering intelligence and, where appropriate, delivering effective policing interventions. The Garda National Public Order Unit also continues to be deployed in Dublin City and surrounding areas to address complaints raised by local residents and businesses regarding incidents of antisocial behaviour. Thank you,
Thank you very much, Minister. Deputy O'Callaghan.
Yes, Minister, thanks very much for that thorough response. And like you, Minister, I'm fully aware that this is a problem that can't simply be resolved through greater Garda visibility or strengthening our laws. Really, what we also need to concentrate and focus on is that there is obviously a group of men and boys in our society who seem to think that it is acceptable to use violence against people that they don't know, whether it's for the purpose of trying to rob something from them, or alternatively sometimes it's just for the purpose of inflicting gratuitous harm upon them. And I think we need to start a message, and we as a society we need to generate a message that that type of behaviour is simply socially unacceptable. And if you look at how we dealt with drink driving from years ago, drink driving wasn't treated with the same seriousness as it is today. But a message went out that it is socially unacceptable. And I think we need to learn something from that information campaign as well. It may be the case that we need to just start publicising the individuals who are committing these crimes, and maybe that will have a deterrent impact upon them. But I think we need to look at that area, Minister, about an information campaign to ensure that there's a recognition this type of behaviour isn't acceptable in our society.
Minister.
Thank you, Councillor Corlin. Again, thank the deputies for raising this matter. And I hear what the deputies are saying, and I'm in full agreement. There's going to be all sorts of underlying reasons for whatever the violence is happening, and the violence needs to be confronted, I think, head on. But also tackling some of those underlying issues that may be driving some of that violence, and whether that's a lack of understanding or comprehension of exactly what the damage they're causing. And I think that's where restorative justice can come into play as well, making people, young people confront the damage they're doing. That is not simply a 5-minute or 10-minute incident. This has lasting effects, very often for years or for the rest of people's lives. So I think restorative justice is a huge part to play there, so it has. And then also educating some of those young men as to their taught behaviour in terms of, as you said, Deputy Gannon, in relation to toxic masculinity and that kind of behaviour that is going on. And we see we're already coming across it with knife crime, where people are starting to carry knives out of defensive purposes. But you bring a knife with you, it's more than likely going to end up being pulled out and used against you, or certainly used on somebody else. So I think after the anti-social behaviour forum I'm dealing with at the moment on knife crime, and that I think we should be able to do it within a scoping exercise of 8 to 10 weeks. I think we need to move on then to that next phase of looking around at what's driving some of those more general antisocial behaviour in terms of dangerous violence by young men, because I do think it's a trend that we're starting to see more of, and it needs to be tackled. We are addressing some of that through the knife crime and that particular type of incidents, but I think it's something we can look at, I think, in a broader sense as well, that seems to be developing out there. And as I say, the local community safety partnerships, there's one now pilot established in North Inner City Dublin. There's one established in Waterford City and Longford, and I think they're going to have a real effect and need to be rolled out. But a little bit like the LCDCs, it won't be simply like the JPCs at the moment, where you have politicians and the Gardaí at the top table. You're going to have the Gardaí, some politicians, but also we want to see the HSE in there, TUSA, housing, other state agencies around that table, and actually bringing in comprehensive approaches where there is localised issues of violence and other antisocial behaviour. Thank you, Councillor.